Speaker me. Just ask me if there's no echo. Just ask me to sit down. It's working. Is it? Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. We'll get started, inshallah. I'm honored to introduce to you tonight's speaker, Dr. Imam Muneer. For some of us who are long-time members of IEGD, he does not need an introduction, as he was our beloved Imam and respected leader for over 10 years. But for the new community members and for the youth, let me say a few words. Dr. Muneer studied Arabic language and literature at King Abdulaziz University in Makkah al-Mukarramah, Saudi Arabia, and learned Ijaza Islamic Studies from Darul Uloom, Deoband, India. He moved to the U.S. in 1989, and in 1990 did his MA in Religious Studies from the University of Detroit, Michigan. He earned his PhD in 1994 from the University of Michigan with his dissertation, and get ready for the title of the dissertation. It was titled Legal Reform in the Muslim World, the Anatomy of a Scholarly Dispute in the 19th and the early 20th centuries, and the uses of ijtihad as a legal tool. He worked as our Imam at IIGD from 1989 to 2000, almost 11 years, and was also an associate professor of Islamic Studies at Wayne State University. In late 2006, he joined the ISNA, Islamic Society of North America, as its Secretary General, and served that organization for 40 years or so in that capacity. Dr. Muneer is currently a member of the Fiqh Council of North America, which is the premier Islamic legal authority in the United States and Canada. I did not know this, but he's also co-founder, co-scholar, and member of the board of trustees of ALIM. And ALIM stands for American Learning Institute for Muslims, an academic institution where scholars, professionals, activists, artists, writers, and community members come together to develop strategies for the future of Islam in the modern world. Imam Muneer also serves as part of the Board of Advisors to ISPU, which is the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding. It is a legal, non-profit research organization committed to studying and analyzing U.S. domestic and foreign policy. ISPU's research aims to increase understanding of key policy issues that impact communities here in North America and the entire Muslim world. Imam Muneer is also a wonderful writer and has a number of publications to his credit. Brothers and sisters, without further ado, I present to you Imam Muneer Ghulam Khalid.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Brothers and sisters in Islam, thank you so much for having me here today. It's wonderful to be among you, especially this community that has enriched my life in so many ways. Tonight I want to do the following. I want to emphasize the fact that we as a community have always contributed to the betterment of humanity, and that we have done so in different ways. And I want you to go away with the concern that we have yet to find a way to better the condition of humanity today. So a brief synopsis of how we have bettered the condition of humanity throughout our history, and the dilemma we face today in not, at least in my opinion, not being able to provide anything tangible to the betterment of humanity. In order to address the last part of my presentation more concisely, I will have to set out what I think are the major problems that humanity faces today. Being here is also of importance to me for the mere fact that in all the time that I've been here and I have been elsewhere, my primary target, and you may not know this, so I'm confessing to something, was to actually look out and target individuals who could be groomed for better and higher places in society. And alhamdulillah, to a great extent, I have been able to, with the grace of Allah, find many of these people in this community, in Southeast Michigan, and in America to some extent. So the gracious read of my bio bears testimony to the fact that we established ISPU, which is an organization that Muslims ought to be proud of, because if there's one thing Muslims do not invest too greatly in today, is in thinking. And ISPU is primarily about thinking. And then we have ALIM, which is an organization that tries to bring our traditions to be compatible with the modern world. And these are not easy tasks, because many have tried to mimic these two achievements, and they have not been as successful. We also have today, alhamdulillah, people even today working at, well, this might be their last day, working in the transition team at the White House. And they too were looked at a very formative period in their lives as people who could make meaningful contributions. Ultimately, it is like Nizam al-Mulk in the 12th century or the 14th century established a madrasa, a college, university. He was a man of affluence, and so he used that to establish this madrasa. And one day he decided to look around and see who's in that madrasa and whether his contributions and his investment was worthwhile. And much to his chagrin, he found that most students were just, as we would put it today, chilling. Despondent, on his way out, he sees this young man sitting under the light and engrossed in his books. And he says, well, what's your name? And he tells him what his name is. He says, what are you doing? And he says, it's obvious, I'm reading. I'm preparing for class tomorrow. And I'd much rather you left me alone. And that man's name was Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, Imam al-Ghazali. So that person's pursuit of knowledge more than satisfied Nizam al-Mulk as his money being well invested. Individuals play an important role, and if they can be found and targeted at a formative age, if we can find them and groom them for the future, then inshallah we will have the kind of leadership that we so yearn for. So that is something that I am eternally grateful to places like IAGD for having assembled youth who could be looked at as beacons of light in the future. Coming now to our contributions to the world at large. On the one hand, Islam it's a vehicle, it's a wagon, it's a car, it's a truck that you use to traverse this world on your way to Jannah, inshallah. So it embodies your personal quest, your personal desire, because ultimately, when everything is said and done, those assembled in this room are longing to be in Jannah, in an afterlife that is promising. And Islam certainly delivers that. And it continues to deliver that, perhaps more lavishly than any other faith out there. Very difficult to determine that. If we have to go out and empirically determine whether Muslims are more bound to an afterlife or Christians are more bound to an afterlife, we just don't have the means to do that. But my gut feeling tells me that we do a better job than most other faiths in preparing people for the afterlife. But that's not the only face of Islam. Islam has another face, which is to imbue people with the spirit of civilization, of culture, of progress, such that people who do not even share the faith of Islam are able to benefit from it. And we've done that remarkably, sometimes unknowingly, sometimes knowingly. But for the most part, our progress in the world has meant the progress of the humanity that surrounded us. We were able to do that. We gave the world some great things that get lost when we engage in, wait for it, interfaith discussions. Interfaith discussions are great, they give you great samosas. But there's a downside in that when you engage in interfaith discussions, and I'm not asking you to discourage it, if anything you know that I played a prominent role in encouraging this kind of dialogue. And in this day and age, especially with our Honorable President in place right now, all the more reason why we should engage in interfaith dialogue more fervently. But here's the downside of an interfaith discussion. You can only engage in an interfaith discussion if you make your guest comfortable. And you can, and in addition to the samosas and the pakoras, you have to also say things that do what? They show similarities. And in an interfaith discussion, the one thing you try not to do is show what? Differences. The one thing you try not to show is a difference. But here's a difference that you should be proud of. Now how you insert that in the next interfaith discussion is your problem. What you should be proud of is what I'll share with you. No other faith, known to me at least, engages other religions like Islam does. Hinduism is about Hinduism, it's about India, it's about the caste system, it's about metempsychosis, it's about karma, all of these things. It's not about talking to other faiths. Islam categorically declares and tells each one of you that what you're supposed to do and what you've neglected for centuries is to talk to people of other faiths. And you know the verse I'm referring to. Ya Ahl al-Kitab, ta'alu ila kalimatin sawa'in baynana wa baynakum. O people of the book, let's work together on things that are common to you and common to us, which implies that there's some things that are not common to you and common to us. So that we have our differences of opinion, but we have some commonalities, and we can use those commonalities to do what? To establish a community and a civilization. So here you have in the Quran itself a verse that encourages you, obligates you to engage in that conversation. Now you should go ahead and engage in it. But try and find a moment where you can say, but you know, with all due respect, we may have come late to this game. After all, we are third religion in the Abrahamic faith, right? First Judaism, then Christianity, and then us. But in terms of engaging the other, we are pioneers. And out of that, we had to develop a particular understanding and attitude towards non-Muslims. we had to make a legal system that accommodated them. Today we're getting lambasted because of that legal system. So if you've heard the word dhimmi, it is today used by our adversaries to say this is how Muslims oppressed non-Muslims. They made them second-class citizens in their civilizations. And it is something that stems from the Quran itself, and all of it is true. And all of it is true. And from your perspective, and that perspective is what? It is life in a human rights culture in the 21st century. It just seems wrong. That you should have a society in which Muslims are privileged and non-Muslims are less privileged. That just seems wrong. But go back 50, 60, 100, 200 years. If you're a non-Muslim, you're just thankful that the good Lord has actually not just spared your life, but He spared your property. He spared the respect and the dignity of your wives and your daughters by making clear in the Quran that they ought to be protected. Not treated as equal citizens. Remember, this is not a human rights culture. We live in a civilization where the human rights culture is predominant. In the Islamic culture, it was the protection of the minority. Very clearly entrenched in the text. So I've given you two examples of discussions that are awkward, but they also underscore the powerful role Islam has played in bringing other people and protecting them to the extent possible. If you look at, I'll give you one example of how this worked, and we can move on. The Ottoman Empire had what is called a millet system, from the word millah. And in that system, each community, religious community, was recognized. So it was Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And not just Christianity, but the different Christian denominations. They were all recognized, and they were all given a seat around the table. So the chief rabbi would be sitting with the sultan, and the Sheikh al-Islam, who's the Islamic leader, would be sitting with the sultan. And in this way, they were able to bring together a family of religions. And of course, you're going to protest and say, but was it equal? No, it was not. But it was recognized. And to you, that recognition is trite, because today everybody talks about it. But at that time, the very idea that you could not just recognize and protect someone's life, but you could give them the dignity of the table, where they are part of that decision-making process. That could only come from, not from the Ottomans or the Turks, but from Islam itself, from its founding documents, and from the Quran. These are enormous contributions we made to civilization. The recognition of a human being, the recognition of his dignity, the protection of his religion. These are things you have to embrace. And these are things that you have to work with when you're engaging in this dialogue. It is a difficult dialogue, because you are at a disadvantage. So every time you present this, the response would be what? But what are you doing with it today? What are you doing with it today? So interfaith dialogue is a great way to go, but it comes with its downside, one of which is you don't have enough space or opportunity to speak about the good peculiarities of Islam. Islam has some bad peculiarities looked at from a non-Muslim perspective. Women are not treated equal to men. From a non-Muslim perspective, that is a bad perspective. And I can assure you, people might not know who the Prophet ﷺ is, but they do know this thing about Islam, right? That women are mistreated in Islam is something that they know more than they know the relationship of the Quran to Islam. How do you get past this? Where one set of peculiarities are thrown in your face, and the other set is submerged. You have to work with this, because nobody is going to be doing it for you. No one will be telling people out there that no, Islam has given us a great deal. Some people are brave enough to do that. There's a book out there, I forget the title right now, that, you know, you've heard about how Muslims have contributed to the beginnings of science. But this guy actually took this thing seriously. So he took a chunk of his time and dedicated it to actually examining that. And he was amazed to the extent at which Muslims were able to contribute to the beginnings of science. And he put that together. And it's something that you ought to be both proud of and, of course, sad, because all you did was contribute to the beginnings of science and not the progress of science. But even so. So you have two things that I'm sharing with you now. That we set the seed for a human rights culture as we know it today. There was no talk in Christianity about the treatment of non-Christians. There is much talk in Islam about the treatment of non-Muslims. Right down to the fact that if you marry a non-Muslim woman who is Christian and Jew, the fuqaha have chapters on that. This was not an incidental kind of bone that you threw at them. He says, you know what, right, you can live happily ever after. No. He says, well, if you're married to a non-Muslim woman, then is she allowed to drink, for instance, alcohol? Good question, right? It's part of her faith. And she has, therefore, the human right to drink. So there's a whole, you can, if I leave you with this question now, so if, obviously we're going to have serious issues with this, but you know, just have indulged me for 2 minutes. So you know, one of these young or old gentlemen decides to take a Christian wife or a Jewish wife. So hypothetically speaking, can she drink alcohol at home? Yes or no? Why not? Scholars never looked at just yes or no. They wanted to know why not. What's the justification for it? Ultimately, her faith allows it. Her faith allows it. And if her faith allows it, therefore she should be allowed to do that. But somebody else would respond, and they did respond. What are the domestic consequences of that? What's the likelihood that the kids are going to end up going to the bottle as well? My point is not to discuss this at issue. It's simply to say that these otherwise stodgy fuqaha spent a great deal of time going through this thing to come to a conclusion, and they didn't always agree that, well, yes, she has the right, but to the extent, slightly different issue. If you are the leader of a particular place, like in parts of India, according to Hindu law, the son is allowed to marry the widow of his father, even his biological mother in some instances. Now that is reprehensible to us perhaps, but it's part of Hindu culture. And so some of the great fuqaha of that time, the great scholar who was otherwise considered very, very conservative, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, he says, well, that's part of their culture, and their religion endorses it. We have an obligation to protect them and to protect their faith. And so as much as we find this disgusting, we have to go along with it. We cannot interfere in their private matters. We cannot interfere, I see that look on your face, we cannot interfere in their private matters. You understand what I'm saying? That ultimately our faith was very, very careful to protect, not to give equal rights to, but to protect the rights of others, and not because this was a cultural development. You know, sometimes things happen because life has changed. We're living in modern times. This was not prompted by that concern. This was prompted by a concern that stems from the Quran itself. 7th century Arabia says, well, there are people of different persuasions, protect them. So these are enormous contributions that we've made. And the only time that the world embraced some of it is when it moved outside the religious orbit. The human rights culture that we live in today is a consequence of European transformations. Europe decided in the 18th, 19th centuries that God will no longer be the center of its universe, and that human beings will now be the center of its universe. So it moved from what is known as a theocentric perspective to a homocentric perspective. Because of that, because human beings was the Kaaba around which humanity was supposed to make tawaf, therefore human rights became important. See the point? Human beings became the Kaaba around, that is what you would call the Enlightenment. Something you probably read and forgotten in high school. But the crux of that was that impossible gave people those human rights. Coming now to the modern world. Impossible gave people those human rights. Coming now to the modern world. What are the challenges we face today? And I don't know what kind of contribution our faith can make to it. I'm going to leave you with that, and you can spend the rest of your life dealing with that. But the challenges are many. There are two major challenges that I want to share with you. One of which we've been embroiled in from our very beginning, and we just can't seem to get out of it. If anything, the more advanced we get, the more embroiled we get into it. And the other is almost passing us by, but as individuals, there are many in this room, and many in the United States and in advanced countries who make a contribution to it. The first has to do with what you would call not religious, but cultural and civilizational pluralism and the recognition of individual rights. In other words, it's the issue of how to deal with people who do not share your genetic pool or are not part of your cultural milieu. Something that you're very familiar with. Very familiar with. It becomes part of our package of humor. So I mean, hey, how did this Hyderabadi get married with a Punjabi? You know? That's part of our, how did that happen? At one level, it's kind of quirky and it's just humorous. On another level, it's absolutely barbaric. And unfortunately, we are at the forefront of this. Almost every altercation in the Muslim world either stems from that or ends out of that. If you watch the movie Crash, you see that kind of, and America was responsible for the Iraqi mess. But if you would allow me, if we go beyond that, it's a mess because of who we are. It's a mess because we are Shia and Sunni. It's a mess because we are Kurds and Arabs. It's a mess because we are Turkomans and Arabs. It's a mess because we are Punjabis and Sindhis. And you know, it's not an uncomfortable mess, it's a barbaric mess. We lose not just Islam, we lose not just our culture, we lose the only thing that matters to us, we lose our humanity. And we've lost it, we lose it repeatedly. So this is a big problem for us. And perhaps we should spend all our energies trying to fix it. It is a huge problem for us. How do we deal with this issue where on the one hand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares clearly, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. In other words, it's almost like Allah is saying, yes, I concede, I made you male and female, and I concede, I put you into tribes and I put you into communities and societies. But for God's sake, I want you to be God conscious, and these are just street signs that you use. street signs. That Brother Ghaus lives in Rochester Hills, and Brother Mahmoud lives in Flint, and in street signs, labels, not opportunities to discriminate, dismember, destroy. And unfortunately, that's the one challenge that is front and center with our communities. And it's one that we can't get past. We've been asked in this country, and sometimes in asking it creates its own problems, that we should seriously consider the plight of the African American. And we all concur that we ought to consider the plight of the African American. The problem is that our own plights are just so onerous, they're just so enormous, they're just so weighty that we can't get past it. We just can't get past it. So that's the one issue. The other is the way in which science is taking hold of us as human beings and turning us from persons who have dignity, who have identity, who have a past, and who have a future, into lives composed of a polyglot of cells, nerve endings. And when you do that, then you're turning a human being into a machine. At a personal, individual level, you're thankful for that. Thank God we have this high tech. So I can move from one bypass to the next bypass, from one stopped heart to the next stopped heart. But if the cumulative effect of that is that you just don't have the opportunity to think beyond that, all of life is reduced. All of life is reduced to one synapse to the next synapse. From one heartbeat to the next heartbeat. You don't even have the opportunity to talk beyond that, beyond the beating of the heart. Ultimately, that beating of the heart has a purpose, and the purpose is lost in the machines that keep us alive. This is a huge challenge that the Pope recognizes, some of the Western world's greatest philosophers recognize. That, you know, there's a great philosopher in America, his name is Kurzweil. He speaks about a theory of singularity. And to give you an idea of how influential this person is, all of the big minds in the big places, like Google and Intel, and all of these places, they have all contributed hundreds of millions of dollars to his college. And you to go there you are invited, you don't apply. Singularity is the idea that sometime in the future, that which started as something very simple has become increasingly complicated. Remember if you don't like glasses, what do? You take a piece of plastic and stick it in your eye, right? Singularity is the point at which that plastic becomes your eye, and therefore becomes you. And multiply that by every part and organ in your body, and you see where we're heading to. See the point now? Start with the contact lens, get to a plastic heart, get to a lobotomized brain that is... And you live in a time where science has moved so fast. The advancement is by way of quantum leaps that you can't say, that's never going to happen. Driverless cars, never going to happen. It's happening. So we're reaching, that's the challenge, and this is not something that Muslims even understand. And I'm talking about Muslim leadership. They don't even understand this. Non-Muslim leaders are thinking about some of the greatest philosophers of the modern world. Jürgen Habermas, Tillich, all of these minds are thinking, here's somebody, happens to be South African by the way, he's given you a great motor car called Tesla, right? Elon Musk, anyway, that's his concern. That is his primary concern. And he lives on this stuff. He's become a multi-billionaire on this stuff. He's the owner of the first private company to send a rocket into space. So he is clearly very, very smart. His primary concern, and he would obviously explain this whole thing to you and I far more eloquently than I ever can. But the challenge is that as we become mechanized, we become less human. That's the challenge. As we become mechanized, we become less human. In this world, I ask you today, and I will conclude with that, what kind of a contribution can Islam make? That's your challenge. When you're done with your fard salah, and you want to get extra bonus thawab points, that's what you should be thinking about. I can't ask a cousin out there in Hyderabad, India, or somebody out there in the villages of Syria to think about this. That burden is on you, because you're the one who graduated from University of Michigan and Harvard and all these other places, and so you're encumbered with this responsibility. You're the mind that is best suited for that. You're the future of Islam at the top level. It's not an honor, it's an obligation. This is not an honor, this is an obligation. This is your obligation of how to deal with this. And you might not have the solution to that, but you can rest assured, Allah does not reward you for your solutions. He rewards you for your effort. Allah will reward you for your effort. You spend half a day reading about this and you'll have a better understanding of it than I do. I just have a greater interest in it, so I can share it with you. But in terms of how it actually operates and the impact it's going to have on humanity at large in the next 20, 25, 30 years, Kurzweil is absolutely convinced that by the year 2030, machines will be indistinguishable from Asra Hamzawi and from Muneer Farid and from Tayyib Chikar. Just seamless. It will all be seamless. You just take out one piece and stick in another piece, much like cars are repaired today. What happens to the humanity of the human being in that world? I mean, the nice thing is what you can do today is, this is a long talk, Bakwas. But it's going to come back to bite someone. Perhaps not you, not your kid. Someone in the future is going to be bit by this. So with that, I leave you, and if you have any questions, you can ask. Thank you very much. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. I can sit, right? I'm going.
Yeah. Here's a question.
I have. This is coming. Oh yeah. No, wait.
I think let's have questions. Let's have some questions. Yeah. I mean, do a mic.
I can hear you. Stand up here.
All right. So the two challenges that you're posing, the first one I think is embodied by the U.S. with sectarianism, tribalism, racism, although not limited to the U.S. And the second one about personhood at risk with AI. So in the first case, America is going to become a majority-minority country by 2043. In the second case, we're going to reach technical singularity by 2045, according to Kurzweil and Gitters. These two things are going to create a perfect storm within 28 years. So we don't have much time. We have a generation. How can we get the Muslim intelligentsia to even start looking at these things?
I think you have a great opportunity. If you want to make a contribution, you want me to repeat what he said? He actually did a good job summarizing what I said. This whole idea that Kurzweil is talking about is something that you understand and you're actually working on it. And you get paid very well. It's called artificial intelligence. And you know, if you're working on this, that, when I was a kid, we used to always talk about the wonders of the human ear, and that it's able to make the distinction between 10,000 different sounds and all the rest of it. Now we're just humbly conceding that the computer actually can do 10 times that. So that's artificial intelligence excelling human ability and then subsuming everything that is human and creating something else that is less than human. And so what happens is, so he says it's going to be by, say, 45 years time, right? No, 25.
25.
20 odd years' time. So, 20 years is a long time, I think. But the point is, I think you have a wonderful opportunity as a community, the Muslim community, to make a meaningful contribution to this. You have to dig deep into your spirituality. You have to, if you think making salah and all of these things are important now, I think they're 10 times more important as we move along in the future. Because on the one hand, it's an obligation to Allah. On the other, it is your effort to center yourself. You understand the word centering, right? We have to center yourself. Salah centers you. It allows you to be centered and to be able to look around you. The modern world and the philosophies that engulf us, they carry you in this maelstrom like a wave. And you're not able to think. You're able to do, you're able to function. You're not able to do what the Quran asks you, tafakkur. You have to pull back one step and ask yourself, well, where am I going to with this? So you have the mechanisms you're going to use in the future is something I'm not privy to it. I don't know what it is. But spirituality, your deep commitment to the key elements of your faith, not as an end point, but as a beginning point. From there you start thinking. This is all about Allah. This is all about Akhirah. This is all about you. These are the three things you have to remember. This is all about Allah. And Allah is not even in the room anymore. You don't realize that, right? In the modern world, Allah is no longer in the room, He's outside. He's no longer in your focus anymore. This is about Allah. This is about you and your afterlife. And this is about you as a human being. You have the building blocks of that in you right now. It's the reason you're here listening to this boring talk. You have that, the building blocks are there. You have to reconfigure those blocks so that you can address the challenges of the future. That, inshallah, will be your contribution to the betterment of humanity in the 21st century. That will be your contribution. But you have to think along those lines. You have to understand that these obligations are not just obligations for an afterlife. They're obligations to help you to be a human being. If there was a time when we used to focus on becoming better human beings, that time has passed. This time is about remaining human beings. How do you remain a human being in a world that's moving so fast? Next question.
Imam Sahab, it is hard to detach yourself from history. You said that we in Islam created a society where others were given certain protections, but they were still somehow considered second class. Now we are in this country where you're saying that human rights are the issue. Do we have a problem here? When we refer back to our history and the people say, okay, you want to be excluded from that system that you created or continued for so many centuries, why do you want us to exclude you from that and not treat you as second class?
And not treat you as?
Second class.
As a second class citizen. Was that the last part of your statement?
That we should not be basically, we are demanding that we do not be treated for being Muslims as second class citizens. But we cannot detach ourselves from the history where we give the semblance that indeed Muslims, even though they were very generous and benevolent, but they nevertheless treated others as second class citizens close to.
So we should be more than willing to.
What should we do?
Oh, there's a very simple answer to that. It's not like we were the only ones who treated people as second class citizens. The entire world was structured that way. There are two or three things that define the ancient world that make it different from the modern world. And the one I shared with you is that it was theocentric, whereas this one's homocentric. And the flip side of that is human beings were not treated all equally. The idea that Here's something. The idea that all human beings are equal was just preposterous. It was just preposterous. People would never be able to, and this was all of humanity, from Africa to Argentina to Europe and so on. So let's talk about, let's just take the most egregious kind of discrimination. Discrimination against the black community. And it was horrendous. Perhaps the only thing more horrendous than that was black on black discrimination. Black on black discrimination. So if people lived in village A, they would wipe out village B, given the first opportunity. And not because they were necessarily bestial, like animals. It's how that very process is being done today, but we use different means to do it. We subjugate people, we subjugate communities, we give them certain freedoms, we take away some, we recognize their political reform, we do not, you understand what I'm saying, right? It's called Dabi al-Fas. Yeah, that's exactly what we do. So the tools we use to privilege our community over other communities are more sophisticated today, but they're still there. In the past, all communities all over the world used these tools, and sometimes the end result was just catastrophic in that people lost their lives and so on. So we are in good, if people throw that at us, we say, well, the point we're making is that we actually had a system that recognized certain human rights, the right to freedom of worship and so on. What I would like you to show us the same for the Buddhist faith or the Judaic faith or any other faith. They don't have it. They don't have it.
Imam, I have a question you submitted to me. What is the solution to resolve differences and bring the whole Islamic community as one single ummah so that we can all arrive at the same goal?
Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I shouldn't share this hadith. Some hadiths, the time for them is just not appropriate. I'll share it with you. I mean, you guys are mature enough. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was asked 3 things, and he was given 2 out of 3. He wasn't given this one. He wasn't given this one. That my community should be all together and united.
What was the question?
The question that palpitates in every Muslim heart. Is there some way in which all of us can live together? That we can be a single community? That we can look past our differences? That we can work in unison? That every Muslim heart has that in it. I think if you have a project, it mitigates against that sentiment. If you're working on something and you're working together on it, then you have to pull together in the same direction, and that mitigates against it. And this afternoon, I know for those of you who attended, I gave you some tools that you can use to mitigate against it. Its entire removal, I don't know if that is possible. These things will haunt you. What you have to do is, as a human being, you have certain temptations, lust, greed, and so on, and you work towards suppressing it, or kind of dealing with it so that it moves in different directions and does not impede your growth as a human being, right? We all to some extent harbor these sentiments. So a community is also kind of encumbered with certain qualities. And so the modern world, for instance, it mitigates against that by creating artificial rivalry. And what is artificial rivalry in the modern world? Sports. Sports is just, taking that quest to be superior and turning it into the Olympics. Turning it into the World Cup, or something like that. So modern philosophers too have conceded that you can't just wish this away. This communal competitiveness cannot be wished away. You have to control it and influence it in certain directions. We have to do the same. We have to do the same. We're moving in the right direction. One of our handicaps is also our biggest strength. We are about 1.6 billion people on the face of this earth. And we represent the global tapestry. You can celebrate that, but you have to know it comes at a cost. If you have a group of 1.6 billion people, one of which speaks Chinese and the other one speaks Hispanic and the other one, you're going to have a whole lot of knocking of heads. But you have to recognize that and work past that. It's an enormous task, but it can be done. When we've overcome that, we've been able to be very successful. Sometimes even in the best of our times, we were not able to overcome that. When Aisha radiallahu anha was accused of infidelity in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam just split into two groups, the Ansar and the Muhajirun. Now, everything you heard about the Ansar and the Muhajirun is great, right? It's just wonderful. But when, you know, when the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked for a solution, and somebody offered that solution, the other guy stood up and said, the only reason he's giving that solution? The only reason he's giving that solution is because he's one of you. The perpetrator was one of you. If he was one of us, you'd give a solution that was far more harsh. See the point? I'm not sharing this with you to denigrate the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, but I'm telling you that this demon, this bull, it kind of makes its way into communities, even in the best of communities, even with the greatest of humanity, right there in their presence. So, you know, we should understand that and try and work past it. It's a challenge we face, and one that we should not shirk.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muneer. I think what do you think about mujahadat al-nafs, dhikr, and trying to rediscover yourself as a human being? Wouldn't that be one of the solutions?
That would be the beginning. Everything starts with that, which is why I said the reason I think we don't have the solution, but we have the ingredients for it, is because we are deeply spiritual people. We may not all have the spirit in us, but we work towards that. When I listen to you talk, I do this all the time. When I listen to you talk, it's all I'm looking at. I may be talking to you about, you know, when last you went to Hyderabad or when you went to Umrah. I'm actually looking at, you know, which way you're moving, and it's amazing. I mean, you're still very, very concerned about your spiritual well-being, about your, and part of that is mujahadat al-nafs or tazkiyat al-nafs. And without that, you're not going to be winning this battle. It's the key to dealing with both these issues. Absolutely essential. All of the, you know, if you don't have a change of heart, you're not going to have a change of mind. Because even if you're convinced rationally, you have demons within you which would impede you from saying, oh, the other guy's right. You have demons within you that says no. Which is why when you engage in scientific work, you have to publish what you do and give it out there. And it gets criticized properly. And you have no alternative but to accept those criticisms. This is how science and modern education kind of grows. But if that system was not in place, I don't like what he says because I don't like him. I don't like what he, and what happens then ultimately, the whole process itself gets stunted. So spirituality is the beginning of it all. But it's just the beginning. Just the beginning. What is happening today, in America in particular, is people are disappearing into this cavern of spirituality. And that's the criticism against it. It's a drinking hole where you take some and you move. It's not some place where you drown. It's not a place to drown, it's a place to drink from. You reinvigorate your soul and your life and you move on. That's why you need it, so that you can engage the world more meaningfully.
I have a question for you or anybody who can answer it. Do you have knowledge of any institute or some college where Shia Sunni are sitting together, or could it be developed? Challenge to everybody.
Well, that's a challenge for you. I don't know of one. I mean, if you want to engage in some kind of sawab jariyah, that's a great place to start. You can start by sponsoring normally you start these things, sponsor a program, You might have a chair, you might have, from that you can grow, and perhaps in the next 15, 20 years, they are actually, we've tried, in the early 20s, Al-Azhar in Egypt had a chair for that, where they would try and resolve their issues. So we've tried to do that. It's not always successful.
We started about 5, 6, 10 years ago.
But not with that. It was just, it's a sentiment that I have, but I haven't actually focused on it. You need something that is more meaningful. I know I was invited in April to Qum, where they have a program for that. But ideally, this is a program that should be done in neutral territory, where both parties are comfortable and they can sit and work on the future. What is very heartening is, there's always this silver lining. That some of Pakistan's greatest ulama, and very deeply involved in Jama'at al-Tabligh, they've taken up this. They haven't actually established institutions, but they've spoken out against it. And when you talk, especially in some parts of the world, anything that is contrary to general belief, there's a great chance you won't see tomorrow, right? Right? Gone. This man, may Allah keep him alive for the next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Very tough thing to do. But to go to a Shia, what's it called? Where they have the gathering? Imam Bar. To go to the Imam Bar and to stand there and to declare openly that these are my brothers. That is a huge accomplishment. So we do have people in the highest positions in Muslims. We have a Saudi alim who says, he puts it slightly differently. He says, we've been fighting each other for 1400 years. And we haven't resolved this. What we have found is that we have systematically destroyed ourselves every time we engage in this battle. So he's not saying you Muslim or non-Muslim. I don't know what it's called. The scholar from Pakistan is saying clearly, I disagree with him, but they're Muslim. That's a huge accomplishment. You might say, but that's trite, it's common. No, it's not. From somebody who comes from that particular school to stand up and categorically declare against the overwhelming majority of his own scholars that no, these people are Muslim. This other person says, he says, no, let's stop this. We're not going to resolve this. Let us just accept each other as Muslims and move on. So there are some movements in that direction. And they need your help. They need your financial help. They need your moral support. You should look out for these people. You should encourage them. Send them email. You have to do that. You'd be surprised the extent to which this helps people. Because this is it's sometimes very depressing work because of the pushback that you get. Very depressing work. It takes its toll on your family. It takes its toll on your children.